All right, come on in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. TNHoller.com is where you can find us at the TN Holler on Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and all that good stuff. We also have hollers hollering all across the state. Thanks to your support, we really do appreciate it. Your donations keep us going. Make it $10 a month, and we'll send you one of these sweet holler hats that I'm wearing. And just a couple special shout outs. One to Elisa Parker. If you're buying or selling a home in Middle Tennessee, do it through Elisa. She's very supportive of us. And if you need a lawyer, Abby Rubenfeld is a rock star, and we appreciate their support very much. All right, hope everybody's doing okay. I just got back from being away for a week with my family, and I'm ready to get back to interviewing some of these candidates that are running for office here in Tennessee. I know you've probably seen a bunch of those interviews that we've done. We have another one today. Cheri Brown is running in Murfreesboro against Charlie Baum, who is he is somebody that was a supporter of the voucher scam and is somebody that we've talked about a few times here. Cheri, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
And you're right about the voucher scam and Charlie supporting it. Um, yeah, House District 37, we're standing pretty strong against the voucher scam for sure.
All right, well, let's get to that in 1 second. I want to ask you before we do that about your shirt that you're wearing. Obviously, today is
Yeah.
the anniversary of Roe being overturned. The Dobbs decision has a huge impact here in Tennessee, where we had a trigger ban. So immediately abortions were banned in Tennessee. We don't have exceptions at all. It's 0 weeks. Even generally for life of the mother, we even had a vote here where Republicans voted against an amendment to allow raped children to have abortions. So we have one of the most draconian bans in the country. Give you a second to talk about what you think about all that and the state of women's rights here in Tennessee.
The state of women's rights here in Tennessee is absolutely deplorable and unacceptable. It pains me deeply that my own daughter has less reproductive rights than I had. We're going backwards in time, and that's one of the main reasons that I'm running. We need to fix this and fix it quick.
What made you decide to take on this challenge?
Uh, I wanted to make sure that we had every seat in Rutherford County. We had a Democratic candidate running. I don't believe in handing an opponent, an incumbent, their seat. I think they need to earn that vote. So that was one of the main ones, but mainly because we have so many issues here in the state that I feel passionately about and am personally involved with in the community that I would like to have a part in fixing. I'm always for the underdog.
One of the things that we hear a lot is that Murfreesboro in Rutherford County is, a place that is actually changing really fast, growing really fast, and where some of these races are actually closer than people might realize. What do you know about the demographics of your race in particular and what's going on in Murfreesboro? And, do they want these extreme policies that the Republican supermajority is giving us?
Um, the folks that I have been speaking with, they don't. They're concerned about affordable housing, how their rents keep going up for the renters, how folks can't have their children, their adult children, be able to afford to buy their first home. I mean, even a basic starter home that I grew up with is out of reach for so many of the folks in our county. And I don't see the state or Charlie Baum addressing those needs. Um, they're concerned about eviction. Folks are really hurting. We have a nearly 10% eviction rate in Rutherford County. January of this year, we had 493 evictions filed. That's a lot of folks, a lot of families with children that are going to be hurting from that. Um, so that's what they're concerned about.
Charlie seems like, sort of like a howdy doody kind of nice guy. He's a professor, I think, and he kind of walks around kind of unassuming. He's not one of these fire breathers that, a lot of them are, but at the same time, he seems to vote with them every single time. So, how would you educate the people in your district about who Charlie Baum is as he does his best to fly under the radar and, quite often,
Mm.
uh, tries not to engage with me when I'm in his face.
Well, you're right about that. Let's face it. I mean, he works at MTSU. He's a professor. He has not held any events on campus to engage his students. Um, you're right. He does fly under the radar. I've lived in this district for over 3 years now. Not once have I heard from him as a constituent. I feel he doesn't represent me at all. Um, I am a 65-year-old, low income, disabled, former warehouse worker of 15 years. I am a working class person versus Charlie, who is, quite wealthy, a lot wealthier than I am. He has a beautiful home. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I'm a caretaker for my disabled daughter. We come from different worlds, and I'm more able to connect with so many of the voters that are also low income within our district, and even the middle income folks are struggling with the cost of daycare, trying to start a family. They're having a hard time trying to balance and juggle. Gee, does the wife stay home and take care of the child? Well, if you do that, you lose all that income. How do they make ends meet? So it's slowly, the pain is slowly going up and up and up. Um, so yeah.
Well, Liza says, thank you for your brave, humble urge to serve. I wanted to touch on one thing that you said there, which is, you guys come from different worlds. You're a warehouse worker. He lives in a nice house. I think that seems to be the real dividing line in this state is, those who fight for the workers and those who fight for the people who exploit them. And pretty much without fail, as we just saw when they passed the multi-billion-dollar corporate tax handout at the end of
Yeah.
last session that
Yeah.
Charlie voted for, instead of passing a grocery tax abolition, and again with the unionization in Chattanooga, how Republicans are all against that. Do you think that there needs to be more done to highlight that Democrats in the state are the ones fighting for workers, whereas Republicans are fighting for the ones who exploit them? Is that really where the dividing line in this state?
I believe it is. Now, some folks may not be aware of that quite yet, but it is our job as candidates and as Democrats to let them know that that's where that divide is. Um, when I worked in the warehouses, it was not unionized, but I tell you what, I was acting as a union rep for my fellow employees to fight for common things like being given 24 hours notice before they called mandatory overtime. Um, and people seem to not understand how powerful the folks in the GOP are right now. They're kind of sitting back, but I think they're starting to scratch their head and say, hey, wait a minute. Nothing is changing. My life, while the economy is doing well, how come me personally, I'm not doing well? And I think if we continue to point out the differences between us, the state's going to move forward in a better direction.
Can you talk a little bit more about that dynamic at work where you said you were sort of acting as a union rep? Like, what were some of the things that were being done to workers to exploit them and their powerlessness?
Oh, well, as I mentioned, no notice for mandatory overtime. Um, you could say, well, sorry, I have to pick up my son or daughter. Too bad, tough luck, was their response. And I said, no, that's unacceptable. Fought back on that. Working in a warehouse, 3 floors in Kentucky with no air conditioning, nothing but, yeah, some industrial fans. I said, we need to have water, accessible cold water. We need to have maybe some neck wraps, cooling wraps, because people were passing out. I said, what do you expect? We are human beings. What do you expect us to do for you at your pace, at your rates that you want us to accomplish, if you cannot give us our health? And that's what the fight was there. 60 hours a week mandatory in the summertime in Kentucky and Tennessee type heat and humidity. It's brutal. So yeah, I had to fight for it, and I tend to be a spokesperson at times. I'm not shy to buck the system. Um, I had no fear of getting fired because they probably realized that that would not be a smart thing to do with me, because I would let my displeasure be known quite loudly.
Do you feel
That's
like do you
my
feel like
blood.
do you feel like telling us which company it was?
Um, I'll say that it's probably the largest online uh, business where you can get something ordered and delivered within an hour if you'd like.
So it rhymes with Cramazon.
Yeah,
Let's
it
put
sure
it that
does. It sure does.
way. Okay, well that's good to know. So you've been running this race, I think since February. I think I have here
Mhm.
your this might have been an announcement that you said you've
Right. There you go.
had enough of their BS laws and their refusal to listen. You're running to give a voice to those who struggle every day to survive. You mentioned expanded Medicaid, common sense gun laws, all things that, they will paint you as this crazy radical, but these are all things that we know people in Tennessee actually support with vast majorities. How has the response been as you've traveled the district and talked to people? How is the campaign going?
It's going well. Folks are really responsive. They keep saying that I'm brave, but this is who I am. I've had disabled family members my entire life, and I've always had to fight for them. Um, Not by training or anything or by choice, but because that's what families do for each other. We take care of our own. Um, but I'm also talking with uh, women that are independent and perhaps more Republican leaning, letting them know that I think this time around, this cycle, it's not just a totally partisan, election. I want people to think about what is good for you. Who vote for the person? Is this person that you want to vote for? Are they going to keep your best interests in mind when they place their vote, yes or no, up in Nashville? And I'm convincing some people, especially some women, to do that because, after all, our vote is private.
Well, let's talk a little bit about one aspect that I think is at the top of people's minds after last session that Charlie was on the wrong side of, which is vouchers. Where are you on public schools in general and the idea that private mostly religious schools should be receiving hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars intended for our already underfunded public schools? Charlie's on the wrong side of that. Charlie Baum supports vouchers. He told me that himself
Right.
multiple times. So, and by the end of this session, only about 22 House members, from what we've heard, were with him on that. So he's in the minority in terms of this attack on public schools. How do you feel about that?
I'm right there with you. I am a firm believer in the separation of church and state. I always have been. Um, Vouchers, I'm sorry. We need to take care of our public school systems first. The money needs to stay with our school systems. Here in Rutherford County, They rejected American Classical Academy schools twice, charter school, and that was overrode by Governor Bill Lee's commission, whatever it's called, committee that he appointed. And now Rutherford County is in a position of having a charter school that they didn't want and now have to help fund it and do their accounting for them.
With a
So
budget
I
shortfall, with a budget shortfall in the county that they're now having to raise taxes to make up for.
we need to take a solid look at how the charter schools are funded. They get to um, get their funding based on projected number of students, whereas the county schools is based on the previous year's student population. So it's already putting them behind the eight ball. They claim it's just a pass through, Rutherford County will get their money and then you turn around and it goes out. I don't know. I don't see how that works well. But there is a strong movement of support for Rutherford County schools to see if anything can be done to change what we currently have. It's certainly an unfair system, and we need to keep funding our public schools properly. Take care of that first before you want to expand a whole nother program, expand the vouchers. Let's get our public school systems working the way they should be.
Cheri Brown, thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing this. Just as a final thing here, how can people help support your campaign?
Oh, glad you asked that. They can go to my website, cheribrown.com, votecheribrown.com. There you'll find a link for donations. You can sign up to volunteer. And that could be something as simple as maybe writing postcards, helping to knock doors, doing some administrative type work. I'm very easy to get along with, and I love to have people come help me.
Cheri, thanks for joining us. Good luck with the campaign.
And
votecheribrown.com is where you can check her out. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care. That is Cheri Brown in Murfreesboro, state house candidate running to replace Charlie Baum, who is somebody that, nice guy, probably stops and talks every once in a while, but he votes just like all the rest. And he's voting to take money from public schools. He voted to force raped children to carry to term. He does not break with his party very often. And those are the radicals, as we saw from the recent Vandy poll that showed that a majority of Tennesseans do not agree with what this Republican supermajority is doing. And so you have a chance, Murfreesboro, to replace Charlie Baum with Cheri Brown, who was a warehouse worker, as you heard just now, obviously relates to regular people, wants to support public schools, believes abortion's healthcare, and is definitely a departure from what Charlie Baum is. So votecheribrown.com is her website. Couple things before I finish here. I just want to say the WPLN podcast Supermajority is out now. The first episode just came out, and it's really worth listening to. Mariba Knight is a reporter for WPLN, which is the local NPR station, and she basically followed around the Covenant moms, a few of the Covenant moms at the legislature for a long time, and is putting out this podcast to kind of show what it's like to be living under a supermajority here in Tennessee, which if you follow the holler, you should know this by now. Like, that podcast is not telling you anything you don't already know if you pay any amount of attention to what we say here. It's nice to hear it, said back to us so clearly. And I highly recommend checking out the podcast. Actually, they even use our leaked audio that we put out from the Republican caucus meeting after they expelled the Justins, and they cite us in it, which is nice to hear. But, really, I don't know how you can listen to that podcast and not understand how out of control this Republican supermajority here is here, and how far things have gone, and how unhinged, frankly, they are. Cameron Sexton and William Lamberth, and the people and that they are tying themselves to. It's really obvious when you listen to it. And so I really recommend you listen to it. And again, if you're here following us, it's not going to surprise you, but it should hopefully just reaffirm that we are telling you the truth, which I don't think you doubt, but I want to make sure that you feel that, because it's really important that, especially with the election coming up in November, like, you feel really solid in your beliefs about what's happening here. And we are not a swing state, but I'm going to say it as many times as I need to. We are not a swing state, but we are the tip of the spear when it comes to the culture war in this country. This is where they come and they figure out what they can get away with, and then they export it to the rest of the country. We've seen it over and over and over again. And so if you don't pay attention to what's happening in Tennessee, you're going to be surprised when for instance, Speaker Johnson is now the Speaker of the House. I mean, he would just be a rank and file member of the Tennessee Republican supermajority. Like, he's not radical when it comes to them, but the rest of the country is like, whoa, this guy, but no, we're living under a theocracy here. Mike Johnson, we have 65 Mike Johnsons in the House. So pay attention to what's happening in Tennessee, and it won't come as a surprise when it comes to the rest of the country. And if you don't help us fight this fight here, it's coming your way next. And that's an important, I think, lesson to learn. It's another lesson you're going to learn here. The Supreme Court just today said they're taking up the challenge against the trans healthcare ban, which chances are the Supreme Court will affirm it, but that's another one that was passed here first. We have the most anti-LGBTQ bills in the entire country. Number one, there is no close second. So hopefully some of you got out there to that Pride Festival, which, as Justin Jones says, Pride is a protest. That is a massive protest, an important one. And I think it's important for people to stand up, make their voices heard. Pride is a great way to do that, because we are very far down the rabbit hole here. We are very close to the abyss. Democracy is hanging by a thread. I think it seems that many of you know that, judging by this Fox poll that came out recently, that Rep. Cohen reposted, where the future of democracy was at the tippy top in terms of people's concerns when it comes to this election, which is right where it should be. You should be concerned. It's impossible to be too alarmed about where we are right now. And as an example of that, we have been seeing these letters that have gone out to many people in our state who are citizens, but they are getting these intimidating letters from Mark Goins and Trey Hargett and the Secretary of State's office, basically threatening them, forcing them to prove their citizenship. And, the response we've gotten when we post that from a lot of conservatives is, well, why shouldn't you prove your citizenship? And, if you're a citizen, you have nothing to worry about. Well, these are going to people with, foreign sounding names. And if you're not sure if you're going to vote or not, and you don't want to get mixed up in, whatever this is, then it suppresses your vote. You just say, you know what? I don't even feel like dealing with it. So you just stay home. This is why they do it. This is why they are doing it. They're not doing it for fun. We don't have undocumented people voting in Tennessee. Show me where that's happening. Show me where that's a problem. That isn't a problem. That isn't a thing. But what is a thing is voter suppression being an art form in Tennessee. We're at the bottom, like number 50, I think, in voter turnout as far as registered voters turning out, the percentage of voters turning out. And, one question that I would ask you is, well, why do people say Trey Hargett is doing a good job if we're 50th in voter turnout this many years into his reign with Mark Goins at his side? If we were still dead last years later at a job that I was doing, I would think somebody would be like, hey, let's get someone else in there. We need more people voting. Nobody's voting. No, they don't do that because this is his job. This is what they sent him there to do, is to keep us at number 50 in voter turnout. He is doing a good job if you don't want people to vote. And so letters like this that seem, logically, oh yeah, well, if you're a citizen, you should have no problem. No, they're going to people largely with foreign sounding names who were immigrants and are now legal, but were immigrants years ago. In some cases, they're being challenged by people who I think what it's tied to is it's tied to the Stop the Steal movement has figured out how to challenge all of these voter registrations. And there's an article on NPR 4 days ago about how they're using AI to do this. And so now they're just, they're finding people who they can challenge, and they're sending out thousands of these letters. And you have to think of it just as, a small piece of the voter suppression puzzle. It's not going to do it all by itself, but between that and then you've got where the number one highest percentage of disenfranchised Black people in the entire country here in Tennessee, where they make it harder to get your vote back after you get out of prison, and you can't vote unless you have your gun rights back for some reason. And then Antonio Parkinson had a bill to disentangle that senseless web, and they blocked that. They said, no, you do need to get your gun rights back to get your voting rights back, which makes absolutely no sense. So it's one thing here, it's one thing there, the gerrymandering, and pretty soon you've got this supermajority that we're living under, where minority rule reigns and they can do whatever they want. And that's exactly how they want it. And so go listen to supermajority, because it's a small taste of what's happening here that was surprising to these Republican covenant moms, but should not be surprising to anybody who is following the Holler for any amount of time. So keep following the Holler. Go support Cheri Brown's campaign in Murfreesboro, and we'll see you next time.